We don't have time to be wasting on these phony, trumped-up culture wars, this fake outrage that right-wing media peddles to juice their ratings.
It's evident in the inability of Obama to command a big crowd over the weekend, even in deeply, deeply blue Virginia and in the highly racially diverse city of Richmond. Organizers report that there were a paltry 2,000 attendees there, and from the pictures and video I've seen, I think it was more like a few hundred. Compare that number with 50,000 showing up for Trump in a field in rural Alabama just a few weeks ago. As they lose on the left, they flail. That's why they've suddenly decided that now is the time to end the culture war now. So, no. Sorry, not sorry, Barack. The culture war ends when you lose and our side wins. Joining us now to discuss these issues is Eric Metaxas. He is the host of the Eric Metaxas radio show, and he's also the author of the very new book, Is Atheism Dead? Eric, thank you so much for joining this show tonight. I can't think of anybody better to discuss these issues because you certainly are a cultural warrior, and I say that in the very most admirable sense because you are unafraid to dive into these issues, even though you sometimes pay a personal and professional price. And Eric, they spilled first blood. If I can borrow that phrase from Sylvester Stallone, I think it was the best of all his movies, that movie, First Blood. When it comes to the left, I think that line is appropriate here. They spilled first blood. And what I mean by that is that America largely, until the 1980s or 1990s, we tended to agree on first things, on fundamental principles, things like what defined a marriage, what defined the two sexes, what defines religious liberty. But then a culture war started, I really think, in the 90s, and then massively accelerated with Barack Obama as president of the United States. Isn't it rich then that this very man is the one now lecturing us because the right is starting to fight back and telling us that we shouldn't be engaging in this culture war that he started?
Well, I wanted to start on a moderate note, but I have failed because here's what I'm going to say. His saying that is as if Adolf Hitler had said, we need to put an end to anti-Semitism. Enough. If Hitler said something like that, you wouldn't think it was funny. You wouldn't think it was hypocritical. You'd think it was evil. It's a level of lying that unfortunately rises to evil. It is so despicable that a president who was profoundly divisive, I mean, as divisive as it gets. But remember, okay, remember how Joe Biden described him? He's a clean, well-spoken black man. In other words, this is somebody we can put forward. He can say anything, and we can get away with more because he's such a smooth talker. I have to tell you, when he says things, in that speech, he says things like, we've got to move forward. It's every cliche you have ever heard because they have nothing left to say. When you've been caught with your pants down, what do you say? They have been caught trying to promote cultural Marxism in America, trying to destroy the country. They have been in bed with China when he pretends to care about the COVID pandemic. How did that happen? The entire party has failed aggressively to deal with everything that suddenly he pretends he cares about. I think 8 years of Obama convinced us that he doesn't, there's not a syllable of truth in anything that he says. And if I sound angry, it's because I am angry. Human people, human beings were hurt by this. If you care about blacks in America, nobody did more to hurt black communities than Barack Obama and the Democratic Party. And then they dare talk about coming together. I think they're scared to death. I think it's just what you said, Steve. Most Americans are wise to this. It took a lot for us to wake up and to see what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with is just a level of lying and malevolence that we've never seen in American life. We're innocent, usually we're naive, but we've seen enough. we've seen the gang culture and the murders in places like Chicago. And then you have people like Barack Obama, who lived in Chicago. He couldn't care less. He blathers on about things like gun control. So on the one hand, it's laughable, but I think first we have to say, unfortunately, it's despicable.
And Eric, on that note, as Steve mentioned, you see these Democrats flailing, as he said. What do you make of that? They send out Obama, they send out the Bidens on the campaign trail. And what do you think that it means in terms of a response from voters? Does it drive more of their people out, or does it drive more conservatives to go to the polls?
I mean, I wanted to say Obama is yesterday, but he's last week, and Bill Clinton is last century. I mean, the very idea that they would wheel out, these wheezing examples of what we thought the Democratic Party once was, they're scared to death. They're scared to death. The American people have woken up, and they understand that the Democratic Party has sold its soul to cultural Marxism. They're destroying America. They're spending us to death. They're doing everything they can to deny reality. They're telling us, no, a rooster can lay an egg, and if you don't believe that, you're a horrible bigot. It's preposterous. Most Americans know it's preposterous. I think America is waking up, and I think by dragging out folks like Obama, for God's sake, they are simply desperate, and they should be desperate, because we're wise to them. It's
right.
Game over. I think they're gonna see what happens in the next couple of years. It's not going to be pretty for them.
Eric, regarding that process of waking up, I really think it began in earnest, at least in the public sector, with Donald Trump, because I think previous to Trump, a lot of us who had traditional beliefs, certainly people who had sincerely held religious beliefs, particularly of the Judeo-Christian variety, sort of mumbled to ourselves and didn't know what to do. We were getting beaten at every turn in the culture war, and along comes Donald Trump, the most unlikely of saviors of a lot of, for example, devoutly religious people, but he taught us to fight. And I worry that there is still a reluctance to fight among particularly a lot of people who do have sincerely held religious beliefs, that there's a bit within, for example, Christian churches, there's still too much of a culture of niceness. And even outside of faith communities, I think among conservatives tend to be law and order people, tend to be rule followers. Do you think that there's still work to do to convince people on the right that we are in a culture war, that this is an American culture conf, and that we have to fight and do it with gusto?
Steve, you've said it exactly right. There are still people that don't understand. And I have to tell you, folks, if your country, if freedom, if your children are being attacked the way we are all being attacked right now, if the greatest country in the history of the world is being destroyed by fools and incompetence and by wicked cultural Marxists, and you do not fight, you're the problem. You're a coward. There's a time when if you do not fight, you're a coward. We're at that time. This country is at a place where I think most people are waking up. But those people who twist themselves into pretzels to create some kind of theology or political philosophy that now is not the time to fight. If now is not the time to fight, there is no time to fight. As you know, I wrote a book about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was trying to wake up the church in the early 30s to what the Nazis were doing. Everybody said, he's a hothead, this will blow over, don't be ridiculous, take it easy. Well, when they finally woke up, it was too late. There was nothing they could do. They could not fight. So I say to my fellow Americans, while you still have freedom, while you still have a voice, while you still have money, do everything you can to work against this, because tomorrow, next year, you may not have the money, you may not have the voice, you may not have any platforms. Now is the time, and by God's grace, people are waking up every day to fight, and if we fight, we will win.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of that going forward. Eric Metaxas, great to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime. My privilege. Thank you.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.